What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve.
I'm Lindsay.
Today we're going to be checking out how much it actually costs to raise kids in the US. I came across this video and I know it's a little bit different from what we normally do on the channel, but I thought this would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Lindsay and I have both talked about this in the fairly recent past, that we're actually surprised at how much lower the cost of raising our daughter has been compared
to what we were always told.
Right.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I always feel like people say that it's so expensive to raise a child. And in some ways, it definitely does increase costs. That's no doubt. But
And the more you have, the more expensive.
Yes, and the more you have, the more expensive it can be. But I think
It's what we make it, kind of.
Well, I think certain choices that you choose to do with a child can make it much more expensive or less expensive.
And I think probably the older they get, it
Yes.
gets a little pricier.
So our daughter, as a lot of you know, is 6 years old currently, 6.5. And so obviously she hasn't reached the stage of, Mom, Dad, I want your credit card to go out and buy a bunch of clothes and stuff like that.
Or a car.
Yeah, so obviously I do understand that that is probably going to increase. But I'm really curious about what this looks like in the US. And I'd also like to understand what it looks like to you guys, wherever you're at.
Yeah, how it compares to your experience. Yeah.
I'm guessing probably compared to what we've seen with a lot of other things, you know, healthcare being one, it probably is going to be a little bit more cost effective raising kids in the UK, I'm guessing. Probably Ireland,
Well,
a lot of Europe maybe.
Depending, though, because I feel like a lot of people in the UK send their kids to private schools where
they have to pay.
Or I don't think it's called private
public.
school,
Right, I think it's public, right? It's the opposite.
Whatever it's called, where you send your kid away to school and they live
Right.
there, and yeah, that gets expensive.
Right, so that would get expensive if you do that, obviously. But I really am curious of, like, because I know, like, for example, food costs, generally speaking, for quality food,
It's
on
more
average,
expensive here,
it's
yeah.
more expensive here.
Yeah.
So, but then there's all sorts of different things you can come up with about a child. But guys, we're just going to go ahead and jump in here and check out how much it actually costs to raise kids in the U.S.
It's very expensive to raise a child in the U.S.
I knew it was going to be expensive, but I didn't know it was going to be that expensive.
The free market works well in many different sectors, but childcare is not one of them.
Sending an infant to daycare in many places across the country is actually more expensive than in-state public tuition to send them to college.
Wow.
When we looked it up, it turned out our daughter's daycare was more than Stanford's tuition. We didn't really start
What?
to
That's
dig into it
crazy.
until we had a baby and I was on maternity leave, and then the numbers really started to hit home, and it was like, how are we going to do this?
Many Americans are struggling to make ends meet. More than 12.5 million children in the U.S. live in poverty. Even middle-class families are increasingly struggling to pay for everyday expenses.
We stopped saving any money altogether. We were living paycheck to paycheck every month to pay rent in the Bay Area and pay for childcare.
In this country, we don't have comprehensive policies. And so that means we are working with piecemeal programs.
Okay, I will say right off the bat, she said the Bay Area.
Yeah, San Francisco is like notoriously all of California, really.
Yeah, but
New York.
specifically like the San Francisco area, the New York area, the Chicago area, any of these large city areas are definitely
gonna
going to be
be
much more
way
expensive.
more
So,
expensive.
you know, I can understand that where we live, it's going to be much lower costs. And, you know, I think that for a lot of people, depending on if they work for themselves, they work for other companies, I think, you know, it can be a very wise decision if you're able to move outside of those large city areas, because you're going to save a ton of money.
Yeah. Also, I just want to point out that this is one of the problems with looking at things in the U.S. is that it varies so drastically depending on which pocket of the U.S. you're looking at.
Yeah.
That you can't really like say that's the experience overall.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's like, it's such a big country with so many states and whatnot. And even within those states are huge. And so you basically get to the point that what someone else is experiencing can be completely different from what you're experiencing because you live in a completely different area that's completely different in so many different ways. And one of the things that caught my attention right off the bat, which obviously would be probably the largest expense for raising a kid is if you send them to daycare.
Yes.
And we obviously didn't do that.
We were very blessed that we didn't have to do that.
Yes.
And to be honest, if we had to, I'm the kind of person I would rather, I know it's not feasible for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for everyone, but in our case, I would rather live much more frugally than go to work, working all those hours to pay for daycare, and that's almost all my salary is going to pay for.
How much is the tuition for Stanford? I mean, like, that sounds like that. I don't know what that is, but that would be pretty expensive, I'm guessing. Like, is that like $50,000 a year or something like that?
I'm out of touch with college.
Yeah, I have no idea what that would be now, but I think it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But that's going to change a lot depending on where you're at and if you send to daycare and whatnot.
Try to help people make ends meet.
I think the United States has just been very reluctant, very conservative when it comes to these kind of family policies.
Improving the social safety net, lowering the overall cost of raising children in this country is both the right thing to do for American families and a smart thing to do for our entire American economy.
The fundamental issue is not that we don't know what to do. We know that children need stability. The way to get to stability is making sure families have sufficient resources and sufficient time. If we know what to do, how do we pay for it?
Here's why it's so expensive to raise kids in the US and which policies could help Americans.
My name is Janice. I am a mother of 2 children, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we live right outside San Francisco.
I'm Darren Geeter. I'm producer for CBC. I recently just had my first kid, my daughter Alma. Basically, I've been on paternity leave for the last 8 weeks, so I'm halfway through. Everything is very expensive in New Jersey. People always warn you, like, there's going to be a ton of stuff that you need to buy for the baby, whether it comes with diapers or wipes, and we didn't necessarily understand how much we have to buy.
If we had had 2 kids in full-time daycare, it would have been a lot more than rent. So that's why it just absolutely
That's crazy, man.
And when we looked at the numbers for full-time nannies in the San Francisco area, they all charge about $80,000 a year.
Oh, she said nanny.
$80,000 a year, though?
A nanny.
$80,000 a year?
Like live-in.
No, I don't think that was the live-in.
No.
I don't think that was live-in.
$80,000 a year.
$80,000 a year. That's crazy. What? Like, okay, I understand.
I'm sorry, but I would just stay home with my child.
Right. But like San Francisco is a very, very expensive area.
Yeah.
Like the incomes there are through the roof compared to the majority of the country. So I'm guessing a lot of people in the area, $80,000 for a nanny would possibly be feasible. But I think for most people in this country, that wouldn't even, like, no way. That's crazy.
$80,000 is a good living. Like
that's a decent income throughout the country.
Yeah.
I forgot what the average is, but that's crazy. But one thing I thought of right off the bat that we did, we generally got reusable cloth diapers.
Yeah, I mean,
that saves how much money? That saves a ton of money.
It's kind of a little bit of an investment.
A few $100.
But it did, I feel like, save us money in the long run. And you have a little extra water on your water bill, but that's cheaper than diapers.
Right. And then a second thing was that obviously, breast milk is free if you can do it. Maybe some people have trouble with that, obviously. But what you do when they start feeding, like we did with Sophia, we did something called baby-led weaning. And that meant that she never did the baby food.
Yeah.
She went straight to solid foods after milk. And what that meant is we didn't have to buy a bunch of extra stuff. And if we were going to prepare baby food, it's very easy to just take the pulverizer and make some carrot puree if you want to do that. But generally speaking, if you do baby-led weaning, they eat small portions
of whatever you're eating.
Yeah.
Maybe cooked a little longer or some processed a little bit so that it's
Sophia would
easier.
Eat directly off our plate. There was no extra special thing for her. She just ate. We were eating breakfast. We're having eggs. She's having eggs. She's starting to try these different foods. And so she was actually eating on her own much earlier than a lot of kids usually do.
Yeah.
Because the baby-led weaning is amazing. I definitely recommend that to everyone. I think you would as well, right?
Yeah.
We know that childcare can range anywhere from $1,000 a month, or somewhere it could be like as paying as like a double rent.
The average family with at least one child under the age of 5 typically spends around 13% of the family's income on childcare, according to a September 2021 Treasury Department report. That's about 1 out of every $8. That's more than what the average household spends on groceries, and nearly double what the government considers affordable for low-income families.
For over 20 years, the Economic Policy Institute has produced something called the Family Budget Calculator. And in that, we look at basic expenses across the country: housing, childcare if you have kids, healthcare, transportation, food, other incidentals like household items, and your taxes. One of the things we noticed when we were doing this about 4 or 5 years ago is that childcare became more expensive than rent in many places across the country.
The most recent report released by the Department of Agriculture in 2015 estimated that for a middle-income household with 2 parents and 2 children, it would cost more than $233,600 to raise a child from birth through age 17. And that's in 2015.
What? Hold on. No.
For one kid.
For one child. About $250,000.
From birth to age 17. What are they doing?
Like, seriously, I don't get the... What is that per year? Like, how much that costs if you average it out?
I'm sorry, but I'm not doing it.
that, like, to me, I don't understand that at all. Like,
they're going without their Nike Airs or whatever.
Sophia has not been that expensive. Like, that's crazy.
That's almost $14,000 a year. We weren't the type of parents who, when we made a baby registry, we had like literally everything you could think of for a baby. No. We started small. We were like, okay, what are the essentials that we need? Right. And then as it went on, we would, okay, well, we need this. We'll get that as we need it.
And I will say this, Lindsay,
we thrift shop a lot.
Lindsay is a thrift lover. So she would always go and do thrift store shopping.
And like yard sales.
Yeah, because like, it's like you can get the same thing for like 1/10 of the price.
Or even Facebook Marketplace, especially where we lived when Sophia was little,
right.
Your hometown area.
Yes, it was
You
excellent.
could literally, like anything you thought, oh, I need this or I want to buy this. You could literally wait a week or two and it would show up on Facebook Marketplace.
Yes, exactly.
Like, almost every time.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's ways around it. But
yeah.
What is this?
With inflation, that number translates to almost $286,000.
Dude, no!
The report
What?
calculated it would cost the hypothetical family of 4 anywhere from $9,330 to $23,380 per child in 1 year.
Per
this
year?
Range depends on the age of the child and the income of the parents. Adjusting for inflation, that range in 2022 would be between about $11,400 and $28,600.
Okay, sorry to pause, but
100% we're not doing that.
No, that's crazy. That doesn't even make sense to me. And look, I'm not saying this isn't happening.
I'm sure it is.
And I understand early on people have to go to work and they pay for daycare or whatever. And I know a large portion of this money early on is probably talking about that. Mm-hmm. But once they're in school, like outside of some extracurriculars, like what is that? I mean, why would it cost you $28,000 per year per child?
Maybe a lot of it is childcare. Like once they're in school, though, I guess
that's what I'm saying.
After school,
I'm saying they're 5 or 6 years old. They're in school.
But if your job, like you work late or something, you got to pay someone.
Usually there's after school programs that are free.
Anyway, yeah, this doesn't add up.
That is insane. If anyone knows what that is, let us know, because I can 100% tell you, raising up into a 6.5-year-old girl right now, the costs have been far below that.
I'd say we're middle class for the area we're living in. I actually am not sure how some people get by living in the Bay Area that make less than my husband and I do. We cannot wait until next year because one of our children is going to public school next year, and we might finally be able to start saving some money again.
Policymakers acted very swiftly in the pandemic and enacted policies that had tangible, positive results for workers and their families.
We do a lot of family supports through the tax code, and sort of the most prominent example here is something called the child tax credit.
The child tax credit allows parents to deduct a certain amount of money from their taxes at the end of each year. That amount depends on several factors: household income, how many children someone has, and the age of the children.
The child tax credit, enacted in 1997 with broad bipartisan support, was enacted enacted in response to slow wage growth, higher cost of living, and a growing tax burden for average households. It was enacted to help reduce the tax burden on families with children, to help reduce the cost of raising kids.
Congress temporarily expanded the policy during the pandemic.
The bill as amended is passed.
The tax credit was raised to $3,000 a year for children between 6 and 17 years old and jumped to $3,600 a year for children 5 and under.
And for at least half of the year, it was paid out monthly. So both a kind of substantial boost in value and this monthly payment. So you're not waiting till the end of, when you file taxes the next year to get it.
And that provided a solid safety net to try to help families really make ends meet during those tough times. And it helped reduce hunger in families. Very tangible results of those kinds of programs.
I can't imagine that was a big deal for a lot of families, because it did. Half that credit came in per month.
Did we get that?
Yeah, we got it. But
was it during COVID?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and it was. I can imagine, if you were seriously struggling, you had all these costs, especially if you had to send your child to daycare or whatever, and you received this little monthly stipend. I forget what it was. I think it was like $300 a month or something like that. Something like that. But per child, you can imagine if you all of a sudden you had 3-4 children, all of a sudden you received this extra $900 or $1,200 a month during this period of time when the COVID was going on. A lot of people were out of work and everything. So that was a positive thing for a lot of people at that point.
Yeah.
In 2021 alone, the expanded child tax credit was estimated to lift 4.1 million children above the poverty line and to reduce the number of children in poverty by more than 40%.
People who have children, that's work that families are doing, and it's work that they're doing on behalf of all of us. So this is a way to try to support families doing that work that allows them to choose for themselves how best to spend the money to invest in their children.
The pandemic's expanded legislation expired in 2021. As of 2022, the tax credit is back to its pre-pandemic levels, which maxes out at $2,000 per child, with the parents of younger children receiving a larger subsidy.
It's kind of a way to subsidize or support parents, but it typically has not included very low-income parents. We've excluded parents who don't have earnings, parents with disabilities, or, for other reasons that aren't in the labor force.
There are two other policies that economists and other experts advocate for when it comes to helping families: subsidized childcare and paid family leave.
Yes, this is something we've actually covered here on the channel. I don't know when that was, about a couple months ago.
Yeah, maybe.
But definitely support people having, especially maternity leave. But I also like the idea of some paternity leave as well. I think it's wonderful when families can stay together during this period of time when they have a new baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important. We understand how important it is to be able to, to grow that bond early on. To me, especially with the mom, I obviously think that's the most important. Plus, she is hopefully breastfeeding if she has the ability to, and it's just it's a very important thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have the ability to do that. We were blessed that we were able to stay home. Now, granted, it wasn't just like, we were just so well off we could do it. We sacrificed.
It wasn't comfortable, financially.
We sacrificed at the time to be able to do that. And I recommend, I recommend everybody, if you can, to take time off. And if you're, obviously in the UK, for example, they have a very
a longer
paid leave and other European nations as well. But even here in the U.S., if you don't have access to that paid leave, if you have the ability to be able to withstand that period of time without being paid, I still recommend doing it.
If you're a single parent,
you can't do it.
Possible.
It's not possible,
generally speaking, but it was worth it for us.
If at all possible, it's a good thing to do for your kids and for you as well. It's a great experience. For
society in general.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is.
These policies go hand in hand because paid family leave means parents can stay home and take care of their children themselves.
The U.S. is the only OECD country that does not have a federal paid leave.
That's crazy, man.
Less than a quarter of U.S. workers have access to paid family leave by their employer.
There is a law on the books at the federal level that requires employers to allow parents to take unpaid leave up to 12 weeks, as long as the private employer has 50 or more employees.
When it's unpaid, it's not really an option. It's not really a choice that many families can take across this country. And it's not just low-income families or many middle-income families that are living paycheck to paycheck that simply can't afford to take leave. There are some states and localities that have passed paid family and medical leave, and that provides for paid parental leave as one component of that to make sure that workers actually have the option to take that leave.
Each state with paid family and medical leave sets its laws up differently, but typically the law requires employers to provide workers with up to 12 weeks of fully or partially paid leave.
5 weeks.
The programs are often funded by payroll taxes from workers, with some states also requiring employers to contribute.
Paternity leave for me was 16 weeks, and that's full 100% salary. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without any kind of leave.
One of the issues with childcare in the U.S. is it's a patchwork system. We have programs that fully subsidize for eligible children a childcare seat, programs like Head Start and some state preschool. We have tax credits that subsidize a portion of childcare costs for higher income families. And then we also have block grants to states to help them expand access. And the problem with all of these systems is that with this multitude of approaches, we're not getting close to universality or affordability. We're not helping the workers in these sectors, and we're not doing enough on quality.
There's a lot of value in having states move forward and do these kind of programs. But ultimately, to have it be something that's available to everybody everywhere, you need the federal government to be willing to make these kind of investments in care infrastructures.
There's so many moments that I would have missed if it was, back in the day where fathers would get 2 weeks. And those are some things that I will cherish for the rest of my life.
One of the things that I think is important is that we think about rebalancing our investments toward children because it pays for itself. If we were to rebalance federal investments away from senior citizens and toward children, not only would raising a child be more affordable in the U.S., but the children would have sufficient resources. Their parents would be better able to think about how they want to spend their time, whether it's that extra hour at work or an extra hour playing with their kids. All of those things become possible if we rebalance federal spending toward kids.
We know that investing in our children has a multiplier effect. What it means for those children's families, what it means for those children in adulthood, and what it means for the entire economy just have incredible ripple effects. And so investing in children actually impacts Americans of all ages, in addition to our entire economy.
So this was eye-opening.
Yeah.
But they didn't break it down enough for me, on specifics of what the costs were.
I know. I think
they mostly focused on childcare, though.
Yeah, I think so, because I don't understand what else. This is the most shocking thing to me. How does it cost that much per year per child? So you're telling me that a family with 2 children are spending possibly $50-some thousand per year on their children. And we're not talking about this as 1 year you spent a lot more for some specific purpose, right? And we're not necessarily talking about before they were in school, you were putting a lot of money into daycare. We're talking about average throughout their childhood.
You have to factor in the people, though, that are spending for the childcare and the people who are also paying tuition for private school or
I get that.
School.
But that's not average. That's people that are able to do that, which generally speaking are more well off.
Yeah.
So
I wish they had gone more in depth on what those numbers represent.
What we're looking at here is, I'm guessing, the average. That's right. Isn't that the average?
I would think.
But I guess I can see 11,000. Okay, so it's the range here. I'm just really in awe of the fact some people are spending almost $30,000 per year on their child.
Well, and now that was 3 years ago. So now
and everything's going up. Yeah, I have no idea, guys. All I know is that I can honestly say, and I think I can speak for Lindsay as well here, that so far it has not been nearly as expensive as people want to let on because of certain choices that we've made.
Right, we've been purposeful about.
Yes. If we didn't make those specific choices, and we've obviously been blessed in some ways, but to be honest, we have sacrificed a lot in order to be able to make those decisions, right?
Some years more than others.
Yes, I mean we've had to hold off on doing a lot of different things we would want to do because of those choices we made. And everybody has the ability to make whatever choices they want to make.
Right, everyone's different in their threshold for what they want to happen in their life and what they're willing to sacrifice for it.
But I would say, if at all possible, being able to spend more time with your children early on, and not having to send them to daycare if you don't have to, is an amazing thing. Absolutely amazing. And I would, like I said, guys, I would say, if anyone out there is looking, has a new baby, and they're like, how can I save some money? Think about getting cloth diapers. It's a little bit harder, a little bit more work to it, but it saves you so much money. It really does. And it's not that difficult. It's not as gross or as hard as it seems when you get into it.
Yeah, you get used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it quickly. And then also, like, making your own baby food, or potentially researching baby-led weaning. I remember doing that. That was an amazing experience, and it was great. You didn't have to spend a bunch of money or go out shopping for all this little baby food stuff. You just...
But to be honest, the ingredients aren't that...
No, not here anyway.
In any way.
Right.
So.
And they just eat what you're eating. Anyways, if you're interested, you can check out baby-led weaning.
He's clearly very passionate.
I am passionate about it because I didn't know about this stuff. Lindsay was the one who did all this research originally, coming up with these ideas and things. As a guy, learning about how to best take care of babies wasn't in my wheelhouse. Yeah. But obviously, Lindsay was very interested in this stuff early on. And I got interested in it as well. And as I saw the blessing from it, and it was really, really cool in a lot of ways. And we just saved a ton of money, and we're able to be, at home with our daughter more and longer because
especially in the beginning.
Right, because of making those choices.
Yeah.
But this is interesting, guys. I'll definitely say also, I do believe that everybody should have the ability to be home with their children for a number of months after that child. I don't care who it is. There should be some sort of a way to do that.
Yeah,
I don't know how to make that happen, but that's just so important to the start of this new life, to be able to bond with its parents.
And like the one woman in the video was saying, it's a ripple effect to our society.
Yeah.
In a positive way.
Yeah, it really
so it's worth the time and effort and money to figure out the situation.
Yes, it really is. But guys, let us know in the comments, wherever you're at.
How does this compare?
How does this compare, what you're seeing here? Do you know the different numbers about what the average is for spending on children in the UK or Ireland, for example? I'm guessing it's probably less. This is very expensive. This is so expensive, like what they were showing here. Yeah. So I can't imagine it would be more. But
depending on, like I said, if you're sending your kid to a
private school or public school,
a school that you have to pay tuition for, that gets really expensive.
Yeah, that would be very expensive. But again, here in the U.S., that's not the average. The average person doesn't do that.
A lot of people don't do that.
Most people don't do that. I'd say, well, I don't know the numbers, but I'm guessing probably less than 10 or 15% of people. The majority of people, do other things. Some go to public school, some go to charter school, some homeschool. And then private school would obviously cost you money. But in some states, you're lucky. You actually get some sort of tax credit or tax deduction, at least, when it comes to private schools and things like that. So you can do that in some states easier than others. But guys, I think that's it for us today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. Don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover anything and everything about the UK and Ireland, and sometimes exploring stuff in our own country, the US. But until next time, guys, peace.
Bye.